Welcome back to Mysterious Case. If you enjoy exploring thrilling cases, consider following us. All the videos on this channel are created for the purpose of advocacy, education, and reminding people about safety and positivity. Please like and subscribe to stay updated with upcoming cases. Wishing you a joyful day. Now let's begin today's story. Catalina Gutierrez was a young girl born in 2003 in Arias, a small town in the province of Cordoba, Argentina. From a young age, she lived in a warm family with her father, Marcelo Gutierrez, a renowned architect, her mother, Eleonora Volenveder, who devoted her life to caring for the family, and her older sister, Lucia Gutierrez, a close confidant like a soulmate to her. When Catalina was little, the family moved to the city of Cordoba, where she grew up and formed a deep bond with her sister. Cordoba, Argentina's second most populous city, was both her hometown and the place that witnessed her journey to adulthood. Catalina was a person full of life. She loved traveling, playing the guitar, singing, and often recorded songs with her father in their free time. Her father's career as an architect deeply inspired her, leading her to pursue architecture at the National University of Cordoba after graduating high school. At school, friends remembered her as a cheerful, friendly person, always eager to connect with others. Not only did she excel academically, but Catalina also stood out on social media, with over 115,000 followers on Instagram and 47,000 on TikTok by 2024. She often shared photos of her travels, her beloved dog, and happy moments with friends. In 2024, Catalina began a relationship with Ezekiel, a classmate from her university. The two were described by others as deeply in love, forming a beautiful couple in the eyes of their friends. Her life seemed perfect: a happy family, a promising career, a sweet romance, and a supportive online community. On July 17, 2024, Catalina Gutierrez, then 21 years old, was enjoying the final days of her university break. She borrowed her mother's second-generation Renault Clio to go to the mall to play bowling with her boyfriend Ezekiel and a group of friends. Although her mother, Eleonora, didn't like her children going out at night due to safety concerns in Cordoba, Catalina convinced her that she'd be safe with friends in a crowded place. Eleonora agreed, but instructed her daughter to stay in touch regularly, to let her know when she arrived, when everything was fine, and when she was heading home. Catalina cheerfully agreed and left the house around 9 p.m. Before leaving, she sent a voice message to Ezekiel, saying she was on her way and telling him to wait in the mall's parking lot. But Catalina never arrived. The drive from her house to the mall only took about 15 minutes. Yet after more than 30 minutes had passed, Ezekiel and her friends began to worry. They called and texted her repeatedly, but got no response. Ezekiel decided to call Lucia, Catalina's sister, to ask if she had returned home. Lucia said her sister wasn't there and immediately informed their mother. The family started to grow anxious. By nearly 1 a.m., when her father, Marcelo, came home and learned what had happened, he also tried calling his daughter, but to no avail. With no other options, the family, along with Ezekiel and a few friends, went to the police station to report her missing. Ezekiel brought Catalina's last voice message as a potential clue. Meanwhile, her friends reached out everywhere, hoping someone knew her whereabouts, but all their efforts were met with silence. Among those contacted by Catalina's friends on the night she disappeared was Nestor Daniel Aguilar Stowe, a 21-year-old architecture student who studied with her at the National University of Cordoba. Nestor hailed from Bariloche, a tourist city in southern Argentina, and moved to Cordoba in 2021 to pursue his dream of attending university. Living alone far from his family, he quickly became close friends with Catalina after meeting her at school. With her warm personality, Catalina often invited Nestor to her home, feeling sympathy for his solitary situation. Her family also grew fond of him, treating him like one of their own. Nestor and Catalina were so close that she frequently drove him to school since he didn't have a car, and he was always present at her parties or study groups. They used affectionate nicknames for each other, like Ka and Nez. Nestor had even joined Catalina and her friends on a trip to Rosario. To everyone, he seemed like a gentle, polite young man with no suspicious traits. When her friends called him that night to ask about Catalina, Nestor said he hadn't been in touch with her and didn't know where she was. Worried, he immediately went to the police station to assist her family. At the station, Nestor appeared devastated, crying alongside Catalina's family and promising to do everything he could to find her. Amid the chaos, Lucia recalled that she and her sister had enabled phone location sharing to keep track of each other. When they checked, Catalina's location appeared in the Ampliacian Kennedy neighborhood, about 2 kilometers from their home. The police rushed to the scene and found the Renault Clio partially burned. Inside the car, they discovered Catalina's body in the back seat, showing no stab or gunshot wounds but bearing signs of an assault. A horrific tragedy began to unfold. When the police discovered the Renault Clio in the Ampliacian Kennedy neighborhood in the early hours of July 18, 2024, the scene was truly chilling. The car was partially burned, with a strong smell of alcohol emanating from the seats. Catalina Gutierrez's body lay in the back seat, showing signs of an assault with bruises on her face and hands, but no stab or gunshot wounds. The police deduced that the perpetrator had poured alcohol in the car and set it alight. But because the doors were closed, the fire lacked oxygen and quickly extinguished itself, failing to completely destroy the vehicle or her body. This preserved many critical clues. Since all of Catalina's belongings remained in the car, the police ruled out robbery as a motive. They shifted their focus to the theory that this was a revenge killing or a crime driven by personal motives. Her body was sent for an autopsy to determine the exact cause of death, while the police began summoning those closest to her for questioning. Her family, boyfriend Ezekiel, and friends, including Nestor, were at the police station, grieving yet trying to assist the investigation. Nestor was distraught, sobbing alongside Catalina's family. The autopsy revealed that Catalina died of asphyxiation, possibly by hand or some object, before the car was set on fire. She had been bound and gagged, though it was unclear whether this happened before or after her death. There were no signs of sexual assault, but the bruises indicated a violent attack. With this information, the police began to suspect that the killer was someone she knew, and their attention gradually turned to those closest to her, including Nestor, the trusted friend her family had fully embraced. As the police delved deeper into Catalina's death, Nestor quickly became the focal point of their investigation. In his initial statement at the station, Nestor claimed he had been home all night and hadn't seen Catalina. But when pressed further, he grew flustered, and his answers began to contradict each other. At first, he said he knew nothing about her plans, then later claimed he had gone to martial arts practice at 8 p.m. before returning home. Sensing inconsistency, the police demanded he hand over his phone for examination. Analysis of the GPS data from Nestor's phone revealed that he had been in the exact area of Ampliacian Kennedy, where the Renault Clio was found, at the time of the crime. Confronted with this evidence, Nestor changed his story, admitting he hadn't been home all night, but still insisting he hadn't contacted Catalina. However, the investigators knew he was lying. A mutual friend had invited Nestor to join the bowling outing with the group at Catalina's own request. Nestor clearly knew her plans but had tried to conceal it. Under mounting pressure, Nestor's tension became palpable. He glanced around, his hands trembling, and fell silent for several minutes before breaking down in tears and confessing, "She was the love of my life, and I killed her." The sudden admission stunned everyone in the interrogation room. The police immediately paused, informing him that he needed a lawyer before continuing. Nestor was detained shortly after, marking a turning point in the case. Catalina's family, especially her parents and sister Lucia, were in disbelief. The close friend they had warmly welcomed, who had been part of so many happy moments, was now the murderer of their loved one. The big question remained: what had happened that night? After Nestor's confession, the police began reconstructing the timeline of that night. Catalina had planned to pick Nestor up at his apartment in Cordoba before heading to the mall with their group of friends. She texted him that she was on her way, and they agreed he would wait outside the building to save time. But when Catalina arrived around 9:30 p.m., Nestor wasn't there. He texted back with some excuse and convinced her to come up to his apartment. Security cameras outside the building captured Catalina stepping out of the Renault Clio and entering. According to the police, Nestor had deliberately lured her upstairs to carry out his plan. Inside the apartment, he confessed his feelings for Catalina, feelings he had kept hidden for a long time, despite her happiness with Ezekiel. When she rejected him, an argument erupted. Overwhelmed by emotion, Nestor grew furious. He attacked her, striking her repeatedly until she lost consciousness, then strangled her, causing her to suffocate. It's unclear whether he realized she was dead at that moment, but he bound and gagged her, possibly to cover up the crime. Around 10:20 p.m., the cameras recorded Nestor carrying Catalina's body out to the car and placing it in the back seat. He drove the Renault Clio to the Ampliación Kennedy neighborhood, about 3 kilometers from his apartment. There, he poured alcohol over the car and set it on fire, hoping to destroy all evidence. But he closed the car doors, starving the fire of oxygen, causing it to die out quickly and leaving Catalina's body almost intact. Afterward, Nestor fled the scene, abandoning the partially burned car and returning to his apartment. After abandoning the partially burned Renault Clio with Catalina's body in the Ampliación Kennedy neighborhood, Nestor didn't immediately flee. Instead, he returned to his apartment with the intent of crafting a perfect alibi. Just minutes after setting the car ablaze, he began calling Eleonora, Catalina's mother, repeatedly. 8 times in total, starting at 11:10 p.m. When she finally answered, he feigned concern, claiming he hadn't seen Catalina, and even play-acting by saying he was looking out the window as if waiting for her. This was a deliberate attempt to create the impression that he was uninvolved in her disappearance. The next morning, Nestor continued his charade by contacting Ezekiel, Catalina's boyfriend, and joining him in the search for her. When the family reported her missing to the police, he was at the station, comforting Eleonora with a hug and weeping alongside Marcelo and Lucia like a genuinely grieving friend. No one suspected him, as he skillfully blended into their sorrow. But the truth began to unravel when the police searched his apartment. They found a ring belonging to Catalina, possibly a keepsake he had held on to, along with several strands of her hair scattered around the room. In the washing machine, they discovered the clothes he had worn that night, still damp, as if he had tried to erase any evidence. Security cameras also documented his movements. The car left his building at 10:22 p.m. and appeared near the drop-off site by 10:30 p.m. Nestor claimed he walked back home after setting the fire, but the 3-kilometer distance, which he covered in just 4 minutes, suggested he might have been driven back by someone. Nevertheless, he insisted he acted alone. These inconsistencies led the police to believe he was hiding something, prompting them to dig deeper into the investigation. While Nestor was in custody and confessing to the crime, new details emerged that raised doubts about whether he acted alone. A witness near the spot where the Renault Clio was abandoned told police that he overheard several people arguing on the street that night about whether to burn the car. Security footage also showed Nestor arriving in the vehicle at Ampliación Kennedy at 11:01 p.m. And just 3 minutes later, another car appeared. A man stepped out, spoke briefly with Nestor, and returned to his vehicle moments before the fire started. This prompted the police to ask, who was that man? Nestor maintained that he walked back to his apartment after setting the fire, but covering the nearly 3-kilometer distance in just 4 minutes was impossible unless someone drove him. Still, he stubbornly insisted he had no accomplice. The police pressed on with their investigation, analyzing additional camera footage and seeking witnesses to clarify the matter, but so far the identity of the second person remains unknown. Meanwhile, Catalina's family faced a double blow. Marcelo, Eleonora, and Lucia were not only grieving the loss of their loved one, but also reeling from the revelation that the perpetrator was Nestor, someone they had treated like family. Marcelo painfully recalled how Nestor was always present after her disappearance, pretending to help and even promising to find her. Eleonora couldn't believe she had once driven Nestor to school and invited him for dinner, only for him to betray them so cruelly. Lucia, Catalina's closest sister, insisted that her sister had never mentioned Nestor having feelings beyond friendship. Their pain stemmed not just from loss, but from the profound betrayal by someone they had trusted completely. After Nestor's arrest, the case of Catalina Gutierrez entered a tense legal phase. Initially, he was charged with simple homicide, but as evidence mounted, from his initial confession, phone data, security footage, to physical evidence in his apartment, prosecutors upgraded the charges to premeditated murder and gender-based violence, classifying the case as a femicide, a gender-motivated killing. With this charge, Nestor faced the possibility of life imprisonment, the harshest penalty in Argentina if convicted. Nestor was held in a medium-security prison near Cordoba, where he frequently received threats from other inmates. Due to his small stature, he was kept in isolation for his safety. At a preliminary hearing on August 2, 2024, he admitted to killing Catalina in front of the judge, expressing remorse and apologizing to her family, but he refused to answer further questions. His lawyer attempted to suppress his initial confession, arguing it was made without legal representation, but the prosecution believed the evidence was too overwhelming to overturn the case. The full trial was scheduled for late 2024 or early 2025, depending on the progress of the investigation into potential accomplices. The case sent shockwaves across Argentina. The media covered it extensively, making it a national focal point. Over 100,000 of Catalina's social media followers expressed grief and outrage. Several women came forward, revealing that Nestor had harassed them during his high school years in Bariloche, ranging from stalking to attempting to coerce relationships, but the school had failed to take serious action. The National University of Cordoba community honored Catalina with an empty chair adorned with purple flowers and the letter K at her usual seat. The public demanded justice, turning the case into a stark warning about gender violence and the dangers of suppressed emotions. After Catalina's death, her family was engulfed in grief, the pain of their loss, an unhealing wound. Marcelo, the father who once took pride in his intelligent and talented daughter, spoke through tears. "I trust in Argentine justice, but I don't understand why we lost our daughter to someone we once held dear. I just want him to rot in prison." Eleonora, the ever-protective mother, said she didn't know how to live without Catalina, the girl who had been the family's joyful angel. Lucia, her sister, paid tribute to her with a touching video on social media, paired with a letter. "You were the most wonderful sister. Now we are one. Stay by my side always. I love you forever, my guardian angel." She also tattooed Catalina's name with angel wings on her arm, a symbol of keeping her sister with her forever. Catalina's funeral was held at a cemetery in Cordoba, drawing hundreds to say their goodbyes. The family intended to cremate her and scatter her ashes in Arias, her birthplace, but had to wait until the investigation concluded, as her body remained evidence. Her passing left an emptiness not only in her family, but also among her friends and community. Lazaro, her teenage boyfriend, wrote a letter expressing his hope that she would find happiness in heaven. Catalina's legacy lives on through memories of a vibrant girl who loved music, architecture, and her family. Her case jolted Argentine society awake to the consequences of suppressed emotions and gender violence. Even if Nestor is convicted, the Gutierrez family's pain will never fully fade. They hope justice will prevail, allowing Catalina's soul to rest in peace and her laughter to resonate forever in the hearts of those who loved her. In closing, we offer our deepest condolences to Catalina and her loved ones. May she find happiness in heaven. Goodbye, Catalina.